Welcome to the Great Basin Prescribed Fire and Smoke Transport Briefing for Wednesday, May 28th. Currently across the Great Basin, we have had several new smaller fires pop up across much of Nevada and Utah and even up into eastern Idaho and Wyoming. All fires have remained small, but we will continue to see this activity increase as we move throughout June, where we see more smaller fires and then fires gradually growing in size. Over the last 7 days, we've seen precipitation really only across the far north, and this precipitation has been below normal for the time of year. Otherwise, very dry conditions have continued this last week across much of the Great Basin. Over the last 24 hours, we did have some isolated thunderstorms in the higher terrain of Utah and over eastern Nevada and even up into parts of northwest Wyoming and eastern Idaho. These were definitely on the drier side, minimal precipitation, but fuels are not cured in these areas. There was some new snowfall in western Wyoming, but generally east of the Great Basin. Currently, our snowpack continues to rapidly decrease. With this warmer and drier conditions, we are seeing the snow melt pretty quickly. This is our current evaporative demand drought index. This is over the last 2 weeks. So with the drier conditions, we are seeing that drying trend again in the drought signatures over the southern half of the Great Basin, but certainly nothing extreme at this time. Our satellite loop from this morning shows a strong ridge of high pressure in place across the Great Basin with weak low pressure over Southern California. That is what has been generating enough instability for some isolated thunderstorms, and that will continue here for the next couple of days across parts of Idaho and Utah and really the eastern half of the Great Basin, but should be very isolated and not expecting many impacts from that. So for later today, you can see that pattern continues, and we will see a dispersion of fairly good across much of the Great Basin. Transport winds will be on the light side, but mixing heights will be high. So we will see just some breezy winds near those thunderstorms over eastern portions of Utah, but otherwise generally light winds. We will see the zephyr kick up along the Sierra front again today, but generally being what we would typically see during the afternoon. Otherwise, temperature and relative humidity today will continue to see temperatures warming up through the week with our peak temperatures later this week. Today, temperatures will be in the 90s, generally region-wide in much of the valleys and near 100 degrees down south. This is 10 to 15 degrees above normal for what we would see this time of year. Relative humidity will remain very dry across much of Nevada and the southern half of Utah into Arizona, where we will see those single digits and low teen relative humidities. As we move into Thursday, the ridge continues to remain across the Great Basin with that weak troughing near the Southern California coast. Otherwise, good dispersion region-wide with those very high mixing heights and generally light winds outside of some thunderstorm activity in Idaho and Utah, producing some of those gusty outflow winds. Temperatures remain very warm tomorrow, probably very little change from what we'll see today, remaining that 10 to 15 degrees above normal, and relative humidity is still remaining very dry in much of Nevada, a little bit higher in the higher terrain of Utah, where we'll see some of those isolated storms today and up north. On Friday, the low off the Southern California coast continues to track eastward, and we do have another trough starting to approach the Pacific Northwest. But in the meantime, this ridge will continue dominating, and Friday will be one of our hottest days. We will see light winds under that ridge. Still could pop a few thunderstorms in the higher terrain of Utah, but for the most part, very isolated and more isolated than what we'll see today or tomorrow. Temperatures significantly increase on Friday, again, especially across the western half of the Great Basin under that ridge. We will see near record highs or at record highs across much of Nevada. Dry relative humidity, even showing some drying in the far north. 3-day precipitation, again, aside from those very isolated thunderstorms across parts of Idaho and Utah, and maybe a little bit more coverage up in Wyoming, dry conditions for the Great Basin. As we move into Saturday, that trough pushes into the Pacific Northwest, still strong ridging in place. So we will see again one of our hottest days on Saturday. This could be our warmest day in many areas. Again, another day of near or at record-breaking heat. Otherwise, good dispersion region-wide. As we move into Sunday and Monday, that trough starts to push into the north. So we will see temperatures start to cool on Sunday. We'll also see winds pick up across the Great Basin and moisture move into the north. We also have that low down south, so even some moisture into southern areas of the Great Basin for at least an increase in humidity, if not some clouds and some isolated showers and thunderstorms. As we move into Monday, that low starts to drop south into Northern California, so we'll see a little bit more widespread moisture and much cooler temperatures over the northern half of the Great Basin. These temperatures will really be cooling 15 to 20 degrees, but bringing us down closer to what we would normally see this time of year. Otherwise, the best chances of moisture will be across Idaho, Wyoming, and into northern Utah, but we will see some moisture back into northern Nevada as well. This continues on Tuesday as that low slowly tracks across the region and will impact the Great Basin through at least the middle of next week. Here's the precipitation for the weekend time period. You can see most of the moisture is over the eastern half of the Great Basin, but as that low moves in, we will see more significant precipitation, especially across the northern half of the region. Some of the drier spots will still be parts of western and southern Nevada. And again, the 7-day precipitation shows that as well. Could see some isolated storms in the Sierra and around the periphery of western and southern Nevada, but again, those will be the drier spots of the basin. The 8 to 14-day outlook, taking us from June 4th through the 10th, shows generally below normal temperatures and above normal precipitation. However, we will see this fluctuate in between drier periods as well, but we will continue to see troughs move across the region going at least into the middle of the month. And so this will at least keep fire danger at bay in many areas, although our grasses will continue to dry out in the lower elevations and even some of our sagebrush is at critical levels in some areas. So we will be watching some areas of the Great Basin, but again, we will at least see some troughs moving through to give us some fluctuations in temperature, relative humidity, and even some precipitation. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back on Friday for the latest updates.